Welcome back, Global War in 1939. We are moving on to the Allied turn 3 portion of the game, and then we'll move right into Italy and then the round 4. So for the Soviets, for their purchases, they decided they had $40 $47 on their economy roll. They were sitting at 19. They rolled an 8, so not the best roll. Definitely under the average of 13. So right now their economy sitting at 27 of the 48 that they need. So for their purchase, they decided to save 12. They're going to get 3 regular infantry, 2 elite guards, a heavy tank KV2, which is an amazing unit, heavy artillery, of course, and then they got a destroyer. Look at that. So from the Axis point of view, this destroyer is not good. From the Allies' point of view, it is extremely good for them. And they save 12 after their collect income of their new economy with the 8 plus Poland. They are now sitting at 47 to spend next turn. Now for their actual maneuvers, as you can see, they bulked up down here. They got a hefty army, tanks, KV2, tank destroyer, light tank, mechanized, and infantry. And they got 2 elite guards here. So this battle group is poised to do something. They can, again, their options down here. They got 3 different ways to go, depending on how the game unfolds. They can come up here, help defend Soviet territory. If this is going well, then they have the option to get into China, help them out, or come down through the Middle East, help out the British, possibly get into India or go into the Middle East to fight the Axis. So definitely lots of options for them to do. For their main border, just a scattering of infantry, basically blockers, really, just to slow down the Germans, take away their mobility advantage. As right now the Germans do have a lot of infantry, but they also have a lot of tanks and mechs and artillery to move around quickly. So all these blockers really slow them down. This is a good move. And they put the bulk of their force up in Leningrad. So this card here, this is all in Leningrad. So we got mechs, tanks, heavy artillery, airborne elite guards, rockets. I think it's like 6 artillery, 5 or 6 artillery. 3. They got the bulk of their air force in here. So really, really beefing up the northern border. They got two AA guns in there. Krylia is lightly defended, but Leningrad is more important as it's tied into different bonuses for the Germans. It's tied into activating more countries to join their side. And it's also tied into a $6 bonus for the Soviets. So they definitely want to keep that. And it's only 2 spaces away from Moscow, as the Germans are about 3 spaces away. So they have time to abandon this, get into Moscow if need be, if they can figure out a way to repel the southern flank. And their destroyer they actually put up here, which then blocks this transport. Was going to do a little sneaky move, dropping the Archangel and take away their $6 bonus, but they decided to put in a transport or a destroyer, basically preventing the transport from offloading an infantry and being a little sneaky. So good move there. And then of course he put in tactical bomber, so that defends out of 5. The infantry will only attack at a 2, so that's probably a foolhardish move. But the destroyer itself actually prevents the attack via transport, so really good move there. And then that's pretty much it for the Soviets. Over here in the east, they actually didn't again, they didn't do anything. A defensive posture. So they're just waiting for the Japanese possibly to attack. But there is 2 resource territories over this part of the map. So the Japanese do want to go in there. It is important. If they leave those resources in Allied hands, well, that's one less point that the Axis can collect to win the game. So it's pretty important. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do with that. But over here, the Russians have decided to go with a defensive posture. Now, for the Communist China, they only had $2 in the bank, so they couldn't actually buy anything. At the time, the Japanese had 2 infantry here. One was an airborne, so it defends at 5, and they only have 4 infantry. So they decided not to attack. They're just going to rest in place, collect their $1. So now that they have 3 in the bank, so you can expect another infantry there next turn. All right, moving on to the rest of the Allies. All right, and moving on to the British side of the Allied turn. It was actually a pretty decent turn for the UK, especially in Africa or the Mediterranean. They did quite a bit of damage. So Canada built 2 heavy artillery. Now you gotta be careful with these heavy artillery with the Commonwealth. Most nations you can build 3, but with the Commonwealth they're shared. So any country can build them, but you just got to keep within your limits. Canada's building 2 of them, saving $1, and building 1 infantry as well. I believe they're collecting 12, so now they're up to 13. Once America goes to war, then they'll get another bonus, so they should be collecting about 15 once the U.S. gets involved. For the UK proper, they're saving $1 as well. They're building a fort, one of their elite infantry, regular infantry, heavy tank, 2 flower class, a fighter, and 2 more infantry. And on their collect income phase, they should be collecting 51, I believe. But up in the Atlantic, the transports that were hovering around here moved up. The Canadians built up quite a bit of an army for transports. So there's no issues to get all these units across the Atlantic now. And we'll have to see where they go. Seems like he's putting a lot of effort into Africa, so they might end up there. They might show up in Europe itself, which could cause some problems for the Germans as they're putting all their focus in the Russians. So we'll see if the British wants to open up a second front to distract. Might be a good move. They placed their flower class here. The just only thing they've done in their home territory, they just brought over a fighter that took part in the battle in Sea Zone 21, landed in Canada. Now it flew back. The other 2 fighters came down to Africa with the sizable, this is a mix of British and Canadian fleets. Came down to Africa. The other 2 fighters landed in Rio de Janeiro. These 2 infantry came up from Liberia, which is actually South Africa now. And the French, combination French and British, did push into Tripoli. So they took out the Italian territory, opening up a second front. So the Italians now in Africa are fighting a 2-front war. So we'll have to see how they respond. And the French came up. They did have some forces in Gibraltar. There was a French infantry artillery and a British infantry. The transport grabbed the 2 French guys, dropped 1 off in Sicily, and the artillery here. So snagging this little island, little cheeky move. And now the British now have a presence back in the Mediterranean. So the Italians taking out the British fleet here. Their presence in the Mediterranean wasn't long-lived. So we'll have to see how the Axis respond to this, but it's quite a force. 6 destroyers, a sub, cruiser, and that pesky little transport is going to start causing problems if the Axis don't respond. Down in Africa, the South Africans, they just did a standard buy and collected their $6 because right now they have $5 worth of territory and then the bonus for the transports. So they're still collecting their 6, which is a pretty smart move. Like what I would do, get Belgium, Congo, Liberia activated by South Africa. Get their base up, so they'd be collecting $6 a turn. They can, put down medium tanks every turn, and get them all the way up. Help out Cairo, or they'll help out Cairo faster. Now, they did a little surprise move. So the British had 2 bombers in Western Algeria, and they had 2 swordfish down in Uganda. And I seen the attack, and I was like, "There's no way he's going to make that move," but he did. He pulled it off, which is fantastic on his part. He did lose both of his fighters, and he did lose both of his bombers. But cost effectiveness wise, the Italians lost a battleship, 2 destroyers, and 3 cruisers. So the Italians definitely lost in that battle. All units were killed except for the transports. The transports survived, so luckily there. But now the Italians don't have any war vessels, and they have this here. So these transports are not long for this world. I would suspect this is their last turn of making use of them. And then the Italians got to build a navy from scratch, which is setting them back quite a few turns. So good move on him. Yeah, he lost a good chunk of his air force, especially those 2 bombers. That really hurts. However, for him to rebuild those bombers versus the Italians building a battleship and multiple cruisers and destroyers, it's going to take the Italians a lot longer to get back those units. So good job with the British there. Fantastic. And he did bulk up quite a bit in South Africa. He even put down a fort here, trying to slow down. So we'll have to see how the Italians respond to the British. They use the transport, drop off 2 guys. Obviously, they built 3 units. So they're got quite a few units there than they had last turn. So they just added 5 more. This transport's obviously being sacrificed to get the 2 extra infantry in. But definitely a smart move. So the British are thinking, if Cairo falls, then they don't want the Italians to come south and drop a fort here to really slow down that advancement. Maybe buy themselves 2 or 3 turns before the Italians have enough force to take that out. And they put it in a really good strategic location, as that's the only, the Axis have to go through this territory to get down south if they want to threaten South Africa or the rest of the points in Africa. So the southern part of Africa, the southern and western part, there's about 3 points tied up in that territory that they're trying to prevent the Axis from gaining access to. So we'll see how it all plays out. They also went ahead and activated the rest of Iran. So now they're getting obviously the extra soldiers and extra money that territory provides. I think in what they were trying to do with the Russians up here, they were trying to get 1 territory on the Russian side, so the double dip, and both nations can collect that $5. But they just went in with the British. So good job there. Over here in India, Australia, they actually went ahead and declared war on the Japanese. Now, there was a lot of humming and hawing, like, do we wait 1 more turn before declaring war? So then the Americans can get a +20 on their income track, but then you got to worry about that sneak attack, which is extremely devastating if you utilize properly. So they opted that declaring war and preventing the Japanese ability to have a sneak attack against them was a much better situation than gifting the Americans an extra $20. Because once the Germans declare war on the Russians, then the Americans will get 10 from that alone. And over here, the Commonwealth, they didn't really do a lot. They did 1 battle. Seeing the Japanese had 3 transports here, and the transports were positioned in such a spot that all 3 FEC convoys were within range, so they can cover all 3 of them off, giving a lot of problems for the Commonwealth. But they went ahead and declared war and got rid of those subs before they were able to spread out, so having one target as opposed to three. Outside of that, remaneuvering, bulking back up again, moving two artillery up to Bangladesh, giving this defensive force a little more teeth. They bought more fighters, another heavy artillery, and got some more infantry in their outlining stations. For their purchase, 3 infantry, heavy artillery fighter, and another destroyer, spending all their money. On their collect income phase, they actually collected $39. So FEC is like pretty rich. The Japanese need to do something about these islands to whittle the FEC production down. $39 is almost on par with the Japanese home production. Well, that's not good, right? From the Axis point of view. Because the Axis over here, they probably don't mind fighting 3 nations as long as 3 of them, as long as their income doesn't go above, 25 each. But if you got one making 40, another making 30, it just becomes a nightmare for the Axis. Over in Australia, more maneuvering. They purchased a Flower class and a cruiser, and they went ahead and collected their $20. Now that the Commonwealth is at war with the Japanese, they collect all their bonuses. So for the most part, I think since turn 2, FEC in Australia has been eligible for all their bonuses, but they haven't been collecting them up until now. So FEC is now, or ANZAC is now up to $20, which is double their national production. Again, a lot of that has to do with these islands, territory that they're taking, plus the bonuses. So pretty scary, actually. So we'll see how everything responds here. The Chinese, they went ahead and fought another little small battle. So this territory has been going back and forth between the Chinese and Japanese. It is a $2 territory. Every battle, they're not committing a lot of force, so the other side can easily take it back. So we'll see how this progresses. I would suspect it's going to go back and forth a little bit longer. The Japanese or the Chinese had a big force here and then backed out. One more territory. I'm thinking that they're trying to bait the Japanese to go in Hupang, and then the Chinese will do a double attack. So we'll see how all this plays out. But well, I wouldn't say quickly, but sooner or later, one side is going to run out of room, unless they want to back out of their capital, because that would be fantastic. I'm sure the Axis would love it. But the Chinese have been backing away the last couple turns, but they can only do that so long before they have to stand their ground. So we'll see how all this plays out. And then for the Americans, well, just before we get to the Americans, the Chinese purchased 1 infantry, 3 artillery. So they got quite a bit. And the Americans did buy them their 3rd tank. So they got 3 light tanks, 3 cavalry, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 artillery. That's pretty crazy. So the Chinese definitely have some offensive punch to go with their defensive capabilities. So those artillery, if the Japanese are not playing this correctly, can be beat up by those artillery quite a bit. So things are getting pretty scary in that part of the map. For the American proper, their purchase, like I said, they bought the Chinese their last tank. They did go ahead and get another transport added to their fleet, an artillery, 2 Marines, infantry, and a radar tower, saving themselves $1. On their income track, they rolled 2 8s, so now they're up to 48 of 80 that they need, so they're more than halfway there. And the Germans are going to gift them another 10 once they go into Russia. From the Axis point of view, yeah, it's kind of disappointing that they missed out on the sneak attack against the Commonwealth, but they are grateful that they didn't give the Americans another 20, because then the Americans would be in the war next turn, basically. Because once you factor in the sneak attack from the Japanese, the plus 10 from Barbarossa, that'll put them up to 78. Obviously, it doesn't matter what they roll. Even if they roll 2 1s, then they're at their 80 that they need. So by not, or by the Commonwealth declaring war on the Japanese, it does save the Axis probably 2 turns, with the Americans not in the war, which they're kind of grateful for. And it just goes to that the Axis are not really the aggressor in this game. The French, the British, they've all declared war on us. We're only defending ourselves, really. So if you want to look at it from that point of view, we're not really the aggressors. The Americans did go ahead and collect 48. So with the dollar they saved, they're at 49 next turn. But with the die roll, with the plus 10, they'll be in the $60, $70 range next turn. So we'll see how all that plays out. But that's pretty much it for the Allies. Pretty quick moves. A lot of simple moves. But the Commonwealth really pulled their weight on this turn and gave the Axis, especially the Italians, really blew back the Italians, especially in their navy, quite a bit. So we'll see how everything works out. It didn't really, overall, the Allies' moves didn't really affect the Axis plan. Slightly altered their purchase for the next turn, slightly. But overall, the plan that we had set for the Axis is still in play, and we'll be executing that now momentarily. All right, well, thank you for watching. Have yourself a great day.